Tonight, we drift downward into a world that does not rush. Far below the surface of the sea, where sunlight begins to loosen and soften, there are places made of stone, shadow, and slow-moving water. In those quiet places, hidden in cracks in reef and tucked beneath ledges of rock, there lives a creature so unusual that even now, after centuries of watching the natural world, we still speak of it with a kind of hushed amazement. The octopus does not move through the ocean like a fish, and it does not seem built according to the rules that shape most other animals we know. It is soft where others are rigid, silent where others flash by in schools, and thoughtful in ways that can feel oddly familiar. If there is any creature on Earth that seems to have the atmosphere of another world around it, it may be the octopus. And yet, it is not alien at all. It is entirely of this planet, entirely of salt water, pressure, time, and evolution. It belongs to the long story of life on Earth just as much as birds, forests, insects, or whales. But it belongs in such an unusual way that meeting it, even in the imagination, can feel like finding a different version of intelligence, a different design for what a body can be, and a different answer to the quiet question of how a living thing can move through the world. So tonight, as the room around you grows still, we are going to spend some time with the octopus. Not in a hurried way, not as a lesson to memorize, just as a gentle passage through one of the strangest and most beautiful minds in the sea. We will move slowly through its world, through its 8 searching arms, its blue blood, its patient camouflage, its quiet problem-solving, and the soft architecture of a body with no bones at all. We will pass through reefs, caves, seagrass, and the dim seafloor where it hunts and hides. And as we go, the facts will come not like sharp points of information, but like small lights appearing one by one in the dark. The octopus is an animal that seems to invite this slower kind of attention, partly because it is so difficult to describe in a single glance. A fish can be seen quickly, crab too, even a jellyfish, drifting like a pulse of transparent fabric, gives itself to the eye all at once. But an octopus is different. It unfolds. It reveals itself in stages. First, perhaps an eye watchful and strangely calm. Then the shape of an arm separating from a rock. Then another. Then the skin itself changing, as if the creature were passing in and out of the background, never entirely fixed in one form for long. To see an octopus clearly is often to realize that, until that moment, you had not seen it at all. That alone tells us something important about its life. This is not an animal built for noise or display. It is not a creature that fills the sea with constant movement. Most octopuses live alone. They spend much of their time near the seafloor, exploring crevices, sheltering in dens, feeling their surroundings with extraordinary sensitivity. Their world is made not only of sight, but of touch, chemistry, texture, current, and shape. They inhabit a landscape of surfaces: stone, sand, shell, coral, shadow. A place where survival often depends on becoming almost invisible, and where intelligence may be expressed not through social chatter or dramatic calls, but through silence, memory, and exquisitely timed action. In that sense, the octopus is not just unusual because of how it looks. It is unusual because of how it lives. There is something deeply peaceful in that, even if the life itself can be difficult and brief. The octopus does not build cities, does not sing to companions across great distance. does not travel in herds or flocks or crowds. It lives by attention, by responsiveness, by staying close to the details of its world. A small movement in the sand, a narrow gap in stone, the texture of a shell, the difference between safety and danger hidden in pattern, stillness, and timing. And perhaps that is one reason people are so drawn to it, because it seems to carry a form of awareness that is both distant from us and strangely recognizable. Its eyes can appear watchful in a way that feels almost reflective. Its arms explore with a delicacy that seems less like grasping and more like thinking through touch. Its movements can be sudden, yes, but also graceful, fluid, and measured, as if body and environment are constantly in quiet conversation. When people speak of octopuses as if they are little sea philosophers or underwater aliens or eight-armed geniuses, they are often reacting not just to the facts of octopus biology, but to a feeling. The feeling that here is a being which does not merely survive in its environment, but seems to read it, answer it, and sometimes disappear into it entirely. Over the next part of our journey, we will gently explore how all of this is possible. How an animal related to snails and clams became one of the ocean's most flexible hunters. How a body with no bones can be so capable. How a nervous system can be spread in such an unusual way. How skin can become a living language of color and texture. How curiosity can emerge in a creature that usually lives alone. And how, in the dim and ancient world beneath the waves, evolution shaped a mind unlike our own, but no less real for that. There is a special kind of wonder in learning about animals that do not resemble us too closely. With some creatures, the resemblance is immediate. We understand the gaze of a mammal, the wings of a bird, the paws of a predator. But the octopus reminds us that life can become intelligent by traveling a very different road. It reminds us that thought does not have to stand upright, or speak aloud, or live inside a skeleton. Can be soft-bodied, can taste with its arms, can solve problems in the dark. It can rest inside a crack in the reef, breathing quietly, while the sea moves above like a second night. And so, for now, there is nothing to do but continue downward, into colder water, into deeper blue, into a place where stone gathers shadows, where shells settle into sand, where little clouds of silt rise and fall again, and where an octopus, nearly invisible against the seafloor, waits with the patience of something ancient. Not ancient as an individual, because the life of an octopus is often far shorter than most people expect, but ancient as a design, ancient as a lineage, ancient as one of the many strange ideas life has tried on this planet and somehow made real. A soft body, a sharp beak, 3 hearts, blue blood, 8 arms that can seem to think for themselves. The more closely we look, the stranger it becomes. And the stranger it becomes, the more beautiful it seems. So let the day loosen its grip a little now. Let the mind grow quieter as the water darkens around us. There is no need to hurry. The octopus has been here all along, hidden in stone and silence, waiting for the tide of attention to find it. And now, very gently, it has. The octopus, for all its strangeness, begins in a surprisingly familiar place. Not among fish and not beside sharks or rays, but deep within a much older and softer branch of life, the mollusks. The same vast group that includes snails, slugs, clams, mussels, and oysters also includes the octopus. At first, that may seem almost impossible. A garden snail and an octopus do not appear to have very much in common. One moves slowly across leaves or stone, carrying a spiral shell on its back. The other slips through seawater with 8 arms and a gaze that feels almost searching. And yet, if we travel far enough back through evolutionary time, they are relatives. Quietly distant relatives, perhaps, but relatives all the same. This is one of the gentlest surprises in biology. The natural world often arranges itself in patterns that do not match our first impressions. Animals that seem similar may turn out to be far apart, while animals that look utterly unlike one another may belong to the same ancient family. In the case of the octopus, its deeper story begins not with speed or intelligence, but with softness. Mollusks are, in their most basic form, soft-bodied animals. Many protect themselves with shells. Some bury themselves in sand. Some cling to rocks in the rhythm of tides. Their bodies follow one general theme, but evolution has repeated that theme in many variations. The octopus is one of the most remarkable of those variations. It belongs to a subgroup called the cephalopods. The name means head-foot, which sounds a little odd until you picture the body plan. In cephalopods, the limbs are arranged around the head, and the body seems gathered into a more concentrated form than in many other mollusks. Squid belong here, so do cuttlefish. So do the deep and ancient nautiluses, whose coiled shells still drift through the Pacific like living memories of a much older sea. Among these relatives, the octopus may be the most fluid. Squid have long bodies shaped for swimming through open water, and many of them retain an internal structure called a pen, a thin remnant of a shell hidden inside the body. Cuttlefish also carry an internal shell, known as the cuttlebone, which helps with buoyancy. Nautiluses keep an external shell altogether, chambered and beautiful, like something time itself once carved and left floating. But the octopus has gone farther than these relatives in one particular direction. It has let the shell go almost entirely. That loss changed everything. The shell, for many mollusks, is protection. A wall, a small home carried on the body. To lose it might sound like a disadvantage, and in some ways it is. An octopus cannot retreat into a hard fortress the way a snail can. It cannot shut itself behind a pair of clamped shells like a clam on the seafloor. It is exposed in a way many of its cousins are not. Vulnerable, soft, and open to the water around it. But in losing hardness, the octopus gained possibility. Without a shell, the body became free to bend, compress, extend, pour, twist, and vanish into spaces other animals could never use. It could enter narrow cracks in reef walls, could fold into hollows beneath stone, could flatten, curl, stretch, and shape itself around the texture of the world. Protection did not disappear, simply changed form. Instead of carrying armor, the octopus began to rely on movement, camouflage, flexibility, perception, and thought. In a quiet way, that is one of the central themes of the octopus story. Evolution did not make it stronger by making it harder. It made it stronger by making it softer, more adaptable, and more responsive. This is why the octopus can feel so unusual to us. Many of the animals we instinctively understand are built around rigid structures. Bones, shells, spines, carapaces. The octopus is built around control rather than support, around muscle rather than frame. It is not an animal shaped by a central scaffold. It is shaped by pressure, coordination, and constant fine adjustment. Even before we reach the famous details, the three hearts, the blue blood, the distributed nervous system, we are already standing before something biologically unusual, a highly capable large mollusk with almost no hardness in its body at all. And yet it still carries echoes of its ancestry. Its beak, hidden at the center where the arms meet, is one of the hints that this creature belongs to an old and distinctive lineage of hunters. The beak is sharp and efficient, well suited to breaking into prey like crabs and shellfish. Around it are feeding structures and a body organization that connect the octopus to squid and cuttlefish more closely than to clams or snails. And still, if we keep looking through the lens of evolution rather than appearance, the relationship remains there. The octopus is a mollusk, a transformed descendant of a lineage once strongly associated with shells and simpler movement. Sometimes biology feels almost like sculpture in reverse. We imagine that evolution adds and adds until complexity appears. But often it also removes, pares away. It lets a structure shrink, fade, or disappear. The shell of the octopus is not simply missing in the casual sense. Its absence is part of a long evolutionary reshaping, a release from one design, making room for another. This is one reason the octopus can seem so inventive. It is not merely a shell-less animal. It is the outcome of many millions of years spent exploring what a mollusk could become if it gave up its house and trusted instead in intelligence, disguise, and extraordinary bodily freedom. That freedom came with a cost. A soft body is a body at risk. Octopuses must be careful. They cannot drift carelessly through the ocean like armored creatures. They must hide, watch, react, and choose wisely. Their solitude may be part of this story too. Their attention to shelter, their sensitivity to environment, their ability to change appearance so rapidly, these are not decorative traits. They are the living answer to vulnerability. And perhaps that is part of why they fascinate us. Because the octopus is not powerful in the obvious ways. It is not built like a predator with claws, fur, fangs, and a heavy frame. The strength is subtle. It survives through intelligence woven into softness, through an almost liquid adaptability, through an ancient body plan altered so deeply that a relative of snails became one of the ocean's most curious and capable hunters. There is something deeply humbling in that thought. The world does not produce brilliance in only one shape. Not every successful creature must become harder, louder, faster, or larger. Sometimes life moves in the opposite direction. It becomes more flexible, more precise, more hidden. It slips its shell and learns a new way to be. And all of this began within the old, quiet lineage of mollusks. The same broad branch of life that gave rise to humble shell-bearers on rocks and beaches also gave rise to the octopus, waiting in the dim seafloor shadows with its arms folded like thoughts. If we had only looked at the surface, we might never have guessed the connection. But life is full of these hidden continuities. Beneath appearances, there are deep patterns. Beneath the strange, there is kinship. So as we continue our slow passage through the octopus world, it helps to remember that this animal did not arrive from somewhere beyond nature. It came from within it, from the patient unfolding of Earth's own experiments, from salt water and time, from softness, from the ancient and endlessly surprising story of what living things can become. If you were to imagine the body of an octopus not as a solid thing, but as a kind of living water held together by muscle, sensation, and intention, you would not be very far from the truth. The octopus is one of the most fluid bodies in the animal world. It has no bones, no rigid skeleton, no protective shell surrounding it. Its shape is not fixed in the way the shape of a cat or a bird or even a fish is fixed. Instead, it is a creature of constant adjustment, a body that can gather itself tightly into a hollow in the rock, then extend outward in all directions like a thought spreading through darkness. And perhaps the most famous part of that body is the 8 arms. People often call them tentacles, but in strict biological terms, octopuses have arms, not tentacles. The difference is gentle but real. Tentacles, like those of squid, are usually longer and have suckers mainly near the tips. Octopus arms, by contrast, are lined with suckers along much of their length. They are muscular, flexible, and endlessly expressive. They can crawl, grip, probe, taste, pull, cradle, and hold. They can move with surprising force, but also with extraordinary delicacy. An octopus can open a shell, lift a stone, explore the inside of a narrow crevice, or simply rest with its arms draped softly over the seabed like ribbons of breathing muscle. Each arm contains layer upon layer of tightly organized muscle fibers. Because there are no bones inside to act as levers, the arm itself functions as what biologists call a muscular hydrostat. That may sound technical, but the idea is simple. A structure like this keeps its shape not through hard support, but through the pressure and coordination of muscle working against itself. Elephant trunks work in a similar way, so do human tongues. But the octopus takes this principle further, building nearly its whole body around it. This means an arm can bend in any direction, shorten, lengthen, twist, stiffen, or flow around an object. It is not limited by joints the way our arms are. It does not have an elbow that bends only one way or fingers attached to a palm with fixed angles. It is a far more open form of motion. Watching an octopus use its arms can feel less like watching limbs and more like watching intelligence take shape in soft matter. And then there are the suckers. Along the undersides of the arms are rows of circular suckers, sometimes called suction cups, though they are more sophisticated than that simple phrase suggests. They do help the octopus grip surfaces, prey, and objects. They can cling to stone, glass, coral, and shell with remarkable strength. But they also do something even more interesting. They sense. Each sucker is not just a tool for holding. It is also part of the animal's way of perceiving the world. When an octopus touches something, it is not merely discovering whether the surface is rough or smooth. The suckers can detect chemical cues too, which means they help the animal, in a sense, taste by touch. To us, tasting and touching are separate experiences. To an octopus, the boundary is softer. The world arrives through contact, and contact carries information about both texture and chemistry. A shell, a crab, a rock, a hidden den, or a passing trace of something edible can all be investigated through the arms. This gives the octopus an astonishing intimacy with its surroundings. Imagine moving through darkness, and instead of relying mainly on sight, your body itself became a field of quiet questions. What is this surface? Is it food? Is it shelter? Is it safe? The octopus does not merely look at the world. It reaches into it and gathers information directly through its skin and its suckers. Its intelligence is not distant from the body. It is woven through the body. At the center of all 8 arms, hidden underneath where they meet, lies the beak. This is the hardest part of the octopus body and one of the most important. The beak is made of chitin, a tough material also found in the outer coverings of many insects and crustaceans. It curves somewhat like the beak of a parrot, though smaller and more concealed, and it allows the octopus to bite into prey such as crabs, shrimp, and shellfish. Inside, there is also a tongue-like structure called the radula, lined with tiny teeth which helps process food further. The beak matters for another reason too, because it is the one major hard structure in an otherwise soft body. It helps define what spaces an octopus can pass through. If the beak can fit, much of the rest of the body usually can as well. This is why octopuses can squeeze through openings that seem impossibly small. A gap in rock, a narrow pipe, the corner of a trap, a tiny opening in an enclosure. If the beak passes through, the rest may follow like liquid muscle. This ability has given rise to many stories of escape, and many of them are true. Octopuses have slipped from tanks, moved through drainage systems, and passed through spaces that seem far too narrow for an animal of their apparent size. What looks from a distance like a rounded body is not rigidly filled the way ours is. It is soft, compressible, and highly adaptable. The mantle, the bulb-like main body behind the head, contains the organs and plays a central role in breathing and jet propulsion, but even this part can change shape dramatically. And so the whole animal becomes a study in possibility. The body of an octopus is not built to resist change. It is built to become change. It can flatten itself against a rock, curl into a den, extend one arm into a crack while keeping the rest of the body hidden, drift over sand almost without seeming to touch it, wrap around prey with a sudden blooming motion, or remain so still that it becomes difficult to say where animal ends and seafloor begins. In a quiet way, the octopus challenges our usual assumptions about what an advanced animal body should be. We often imagine sophistication as something engineered through rigidity and precision joints, through stable architecture and repeating mechanical patterns. The octopus offers another answer: precision without rigidity, control without bones, strength without hardness. It is not less organized because it is soft. It is organized differently, in a way that lets the body remain open to almost infinite small adjustments. Perhaps that is why watching an octopus can feel so mesmerizing. Its body does not simply move through the environment. It negotiates with it. It reads shape with shape, texture with texture. Its arms unfold into the world like lines of thought, and the suckers make contact with a patience that feels almost meditative. The beak waits at the center, hidden, sharp, and efficient. And all around it, the sea holds this strange creature gently, as if water itself were the one place such a body could truly belong. A body without bones, 8 arms filled with sensation, hundreds of suckers tasting the world by touch, and one small beak at the center, like a dark key hidden inside silk. The more we look at the octopus, the more it begins to seem less like a creature built from separate parts, and more like a single flowing idea, soft, searching, and astonishingly alive. Beneath the soft skin and fluid movement of the octopus, there is a physiology just as unusual as its shape. Some animals seem strange from the outside, but inwardly follow patterns that feel familiar. The octopus is not one of them. even within its hidden systems. Its circulation, its breathing, the chemistry of its blood. It continues to depart from what many of us expect from animal life. And perhaps the most quietly famous detail of all is this: the octopus has 3 hearts. That fact is often spoken in a quick, bright way, as if it were simply an oddity to be collected and admired. But in the slower light of understanding, it becomes something more interesting than a curiosity. It becomes part of a whole design, one shaped by life in salt water, by the challenge of extracting oxygen from the sea, and by the needs of a body that is both active and soft. One of the octopus's hearts is the main systemic heart. This is the one that sends oxygen-rich blood out through the body, carrying it to tissues and organs. But before the blood reaches that stage, it passes through the gills, where oxygen is taken in from the surrounding water. And helping that process along are 2 additional hearts, called branchial hearts, one for each gill. Their job is to pump blood through the gills so that gas exchange can happen more effectively. So, in a quiet and elegant arrangement, the octopus does not rely on a single central pump alone. It distributes part of the work. 2 hearts serve the gills. One serves the rest of the body. This is not an extravagance. It is a practical answer to a demanding environment. Water contains far less oxygen than air, and extracting that oxygen requires effort. Gills are marvelous structures, but they are working with a thinner supply than lungs breathing open air. The octopus, with its active nervous system, muscular arms, and need for precise control, depends on a steady flow of oxygen through its tissues. Its 3-heart system helps support that need. It is one more way evolution shaped the octopus into a creature of subtle efficiency, even if that efficiency looks unusual from the outside. And then there is the blood itself. Octopus blood is blue, not bright blue like paint or sky, but blue because of the molecule it uses to carry oxygen: hemocyanin. In humans and most other vertebrates, oxygen travels in the blood attached to hemoglobin, an iron-based molecule that gives our blood its red color. In octopuses, and in some other invertebrates, oxygen is carried instead by copper-based hemocyanin. When oxygenated, this gives the blood a bluish color. Once again, the strangeness is not decorative. It has a function. Hemocyanin is especially useful in cold environments and in conditions where oxygen may be relatively limited. Many octopus species live in cool ocean waters, and even those in warmer seas still inhabit an environment where oxygen must be gathered from water rather than air. In those conditions, hemocyanin can perform effectively, helping support life in habitats that ask for a great deal of physiological adaptation. So the blue blood of the octopus is not a whimsical accident of nature. It is part of a working solution: cold water, low oxygen, a soft-bodied predator moving through reef, sand, and shadow. 3 hearts and copper-based blood belong naturally to that world. There is, however, a small cost hidden inside this arrangement. One of the more fascinating details of octopus circulation is that the main systemic heart can stop beating, or at least greatly reduce its activity, during vigorous swimming. This means that swimming by jet propulsion, though dramatic and useful when necessary, is physiologically expensive. It places strain on the body and is not the octopus's most economical way of moving. That is one reason many octopuses prefer to crawl. They move across the seafloor using their arms, quietly and deliberately, rather than launching themselves through the water for long periods. Crawling is calmer, more controlled, and often less demanding. The octopus can stay close to shelter, close to texture, close to the small details of its environment. Can pause easily. It can listen in its own bodily way to the surface beneath it. In this light, the octopus's preference for creeping over reef and stone is not just behavioral. It is also physiological. Its body is telling it something about what kind of movement is sustainable. There is a certain beauty in that. The octopus is capable of sudden bursts, yes, can jet away in a cloud of ink when danger appears, can move with startling speed, but its deeper rhythm is not one of constant rushing. Its design favors patience, contact, efficiency, and intermittent motion. In a sense, its three hearts support a life that is active but not reckless. A life of effort balanced carefully against the cost of effort. And as always with octopuses, the breathing itself belongs to that rhythm. Water is drawn into the mantle cavity, passes over the gills, and is expelled again. This same system is linked to the siphon, the muscular funnel through which water can be forcefully pushed for jet propulsion. So breathing and movement, respiration and escape are connected through the shape of the body. The mantle is not just a container for organs. It is part of a living pump, expanding and contracting gently, constantly involved in the exchange between animal and sea. Sometimes, when we learn unusual animal facts, they remain separate in the mind. 3 hearts, blue blood, gills, a siphon. But with the octopus, these details become calmer and more meaningful when we let them settle together. They are not random pieces of strangeness. They form a coherent style of life, a body built for salt water and silence, a metabolism tuned to a medium where oxygen is harder to gather, a circulatory system divided into parts, as though even the work of keeping alive has been distributed with quiet care. It also reminds us that life does not solve the same problem only once. There is no single perfect way to move oxygen through a body. No one designed for blood, no single arrangement of hearts, no final pattern for survival. The octopus shows us a different answer, one that feels almost foreign at first, and then slowly becomes beautiful in its logic. What seems odd becomes fitting. What seems alien becomes precise. What seems elaborate becomes necessary. 3 hearts for a body of muscle and intelligence. Blue blood for the chemistry of the sea. A life close to the seafloor where energy must be spent carefully. And all of it happening quietly, hidden under skin that can change color and arms that can think through touch. The deeper we go into the octopus, the more it seems shaped not by extravagance, but by adaptation refined into elegance. Nothing is there for show. The extra hearts are not there to astonish us. The blue blood is not there to seem mysterious. These things are simply the form that survival took in a creature descended from ancient mollusks, living in cold currents and dim reefs, breathing water, moving softly, and asking its unusual body to do extraordinary things. So if the octopus can feel like a visitor from another world, perhaps that feeling comes from a simple truth. Its world is another world, not another planet, but another medium, another chemistry, another pressure, another pace of being. And in that watery world, far from the rules of air and bone and red blood, 3 hearts beating through blue circulation are not strange at all. They are simply what life became in the dark and patient language of the sea. If the body of the octopus already seems unusual, its nervous system makes it stranger still. This is the point where many people first begin to feel that they are looking at a form of life shaped by a very different logic. Not because the octopus is magical, and not because science cannot explain it, but because the arrangement is so unlike the one we know in ourselves. In humans, the brain is unmistakably the command center. It receives, interprets, decides, and directs. Signals travel outward through the body, but the sense of control feels centralized. With the octopus, control is more distributed, more flowing, more spread through the body like a quiet network. This is why people sometimes say the octopus has 9 brains. That phrase is not literally correct in the strict anatomical sense, but it gestures towards something real. The octopus has one central brain, wrapped around the esophagus in a ring-like structure, and then large clusters of neurons in each of its 8 arms. These are not separate little minds in the way popular imagination sometimes suggests, but they do allow the arms to process a remarkable amount of information locally. In other words, not every sensation and movement has to be routed all the way back to the central brain before something useful happens. The arms can do a great deal on their own, and that changes the feeling of what an octopus is. A large portion of the octopus's neurons are not gathered in its central brain at all, but distributed throughout its body, especially in the arms. This means that much of the intelligence of the animal is embodied very directly. The arms are not passive tools waiting for orders from above. They are active participants in sensing and responding. They explore, adjust, and coordinate with a degree of semi-independence that seems almost difficult to imagine if we only compare them to our own limbs. A human hand can touch, of course, can be deft and sensitive, but it does not decide very much for itself. An octopus arm, by contrast, can begin investigating a crevice, grip, and release with subtle patterning, and manage complex movements while the rest of the animal is doing other things. The central brain remains essential, but the work of interaction is shared more broadly across the body. It is as though thought has been loosened from a single center and allowed to settle into the limbs. This makes sense when we remember what an octopus body is like. 8 highly flexible arms, each lined with suckers capable of sensing touch and chemistry, moving in a world full of cracks, textures, prey, and shelter. If every tiny adjustment had to wait for a central command, the system would be slow and cumbersome. But by allowing local neural processing in the arms, evolution gave the octopus a different kind of responsiveness. The animal can act with fluidity because its intelligence is not bottled up in one place. This does not mean the octopus is fragmented. Quite the opposite. It is coordinated beautifully. The arms do not simply behave as separate creatures. They remain part of a whole animal with goals, attention, and shifting priorities. The central brain still integrates, guides, and learns. But beneath that whole, there is a style of organization that feels more like a conversation than a hierarchy. The body and brain are in constant exchange. One arm explores here, another steadies there, another curls around stone, another reaches toward a hidden opening, and somehow it all remains one continuous act. Watching an octopus move can make this visible. There are moments when the arms seem to know where to go before the body fully follows. One traces along rock, another touches sand, a third gathers under the body for support, a fourth rises slightly as if sampling the water. The central brain is not absent from this, but neither is it micromanaging every detail in the way we might expect from our own experience. The octopus seems to think through contact, through distributed response, through a body that is itself deeply intelligent. Perhaps this is one reason octopuses can feel so hard to categorize. We are used to imagining a mind as something located in one place, behind the eyes, inside a head. The octopus gently resists that image. Yes, it has a head. Yes, it has a brain. But much of its moment-to-moment interaction with the world happens through neural richness spread into the arms themselves. Its awareness is not detached from the body. It is braided through the body. And that, in a very quiet way, is one of the most profound facts about the octopus. It suggests that intelligence can take forms very different from our own. It can be more decentralized, more tactile, more distributed. It can emerge not as a single spotlight shining from the head, but as a field of soft attention spread across a flexible living shape. The octopus does not merely have arms attached to a thinking center. It has arms that participate in the work of thinking. Even its problem-solving begins to feel different in that light. When an octopus opens a shell, explores a container, or navigates a complex space, it is not just using its limbs. It is engaging the world through a network of sensation and response much more entwined than our own. The arms gather information while also acting upon it. They do not wait passively to be told what everything means. They are part of how meaning is formed for the animal in the first place. Of course, the central brain still matters enormously. It supports learning, memory, coordination, and the broader patterns of behavior that make octopuses such capable animals. It helps the octopus recognize situations, adapt strategies, and respond in ways that seem flexible rather than automatic. But the beauty of the system lies in how brain and body are not sharply separated. They belong to one another in a more distributed way than we are used to seeing. This makes the octopus feel less like a machine with tools and more like a living network. A network of touch, a network of motion, a network of local decisions gathered into a larger flow. And perhaps that is why the animal can seem at once so alien and so mesmerizing. Its intelligence is not expressed through voice, social display, or visible planning. It is expressed through arms moving over stone, suckers testing the world, local responses joining into larger behavior, and a central mind holding all of it together without needing to dominate every small act. There is something calming in that image. The octopus does not force order onto the body from above. It allows order to emerge through relationship, through communication, through many parts working at once, each with some freedom, all held within one living self. It is a quiet reminder that nature does not build minds according to a single blueprint. Sometimes it gathers intelligence into a skull. Sometimes it lets it flow into the limbs. So when people say the octopus has 9 brains, the deeper truth is softer and more interesting. It has one central brain, yes, but it also has a body so richly wired, so neurally alive in its arms, that the old boundary between mind and limb begins to blur. And there, in that blur, the octopus becomes what it has always seemed to be, not a fantasy creature, not an impossible being, but a real animal shaped by evolution into one of the ocean's most unusual ways of thinking. The skin of an octopus is not simply a covering. It is not only there to protect the body from the sea, or to form a boundary between the animal and the water around it. In the octopus, skin becomes something far more active than that. It becomes part of perception, part of survival, part of communication with the world. It can darken, pale, stripe itself, ripple with texture, and shift so quickly that the body seems to dissolve into stone, coral, or sand before the eye has fully understood what it is seeing. To watch an octopus change its appearance is to witness one of the quiet marvels of biology. The transformation can happen in a moment, yet it rarely feels loud. A pale body resting on rock deepens into mottled brown. Smooth skin rises into tiny bumps, and suddenly the animal resembles a patch of reef or a rough fragment of shell. The eye remains, perhaps, still and watchful, but the rest of the body becomes background. It is not disappearing in the magical sense. It is entering into an intimate agreement with its surroundings, becoming visually continuous with the place where it rests. This ability begins with special cells in the skin. The most often mentioned are the chromatophores. These are tiny sacs or organs containing pigment, and each one is surrounded by little muscles. When those muscles contract, the pigment sac spreads outward and becomes more visible. When the muscles relax, the sac shrinks again. Because there are many chromatophores arranged across the skin, and because different ones contain different pigments, the octopus can create complex patterns with astonishing speed. Patch darkens here. A band appears there. A dappled field emerges across the mantle and arms. The result is not just color, but pattern. Beneath and around these pigment structures are other layers that also shape the look of the skin. Iridophores can reflect light in shimmering ways, producing iridescent effects or shifting brightness. Leucophores scatter light more diffusely, helping create paler tones and allowing the skin to respond subtly to the surrounding visual environment. Together, these layers give the octopus a rich visual vocabulary. It can become darker, lighter, spotted, striped, muted, or reflective depending on what the moment asks of it. And then there is texture. Color alone would already be extraordinary, but the octopus can also alter the surface of its skin, raising small papillae, tiny muscular projections, so that smooth skin becomes rough, leafy, pebbled, or uneven. Against coral, this matters. Against stone, this matters. On a sandy bottom scattered with shell and debris, this matters too. The octopus does not simply paint itself to match the world. It reshapes its outer surface so that light touches it in a more convincing way. This is camouflage, yes, but camouflage of a very complete kind. Not just hue, not just brightness, not just pattern, but form itself shifting toward resemblance. And perhaps that is why the octopus can seem so ghost-like. It does not vanish by becoming transparent like some marine animals. It vanishes by becoming specific. This rock, this coral, this patch of rubble, this broken shell bed. The disguise is local, precise, responsive to the exact environment in which the animal finds itself. If it moves to a new place, the skin may change again. The body is always reading the scene and answering it. Exactly how octopuses do this so effectively remains one of the most fascinating questions in marine biology. Octopuses are generally thought to be colorblind in the human sense. They do not appear to see the full range of colors the way we do, and yet they can produce beautifully matched camouflage. This sounds like a contradiction at first, but nature often holds these kinds of paradoxes. Researchers have explored the possibility that octopuses rely heavily on contrast, brightness, polarization of light, and pattern detection rather than color perception as humans understand it. Some scientists have also investigated whether the skin itself may play a more active sensory role than once believed. The full picture is still being studied, and that uncertainty gives the subject a soft kind of mystery. Not the mystery of magic, but the mystery of a living system more subtle than our current explanations can fully contain. The octopus changes in ways that suggest exquisite control, and although we understand much of the machinery involved, there are still details of coordination, sensation, and decision-making that remain beautifully complex. Still, even what we do know is enough to inspire quiet awe. The nervous system communicates with the skin through an immense web of control, allowing changes to happen almost instantly. The body can respond to alarm, concealment, hunting, or movement by altering its appearance in real time. A resting octopus may remain softly mottled and still. A disturbed one may flash darker. A hunting one may take on patterns that help it blend as it approaches prey. The skin becomes a living display, but not in the theatrical sense. More like a shifting whisper, a silent adjustment to the conditions of the moment. There is also something deeply beautiful in the fact that the skin of an octopus is never entirely separate from behavior. An octopus does not just possess camouflage as a static trait. It chooses positions, angles, backgrounds, and stillness to make the camouflage work. It settles near matching surfaces. It folds the arms in certain ways, pauses. It lets the disguise become complete through posture as much as pigment. The animal and its environment meet halfway. The body changes and the behavior supports the change. This makes the octopus feel less like a creature wearing a disguise and more like a creature participating in a relationship with light. Light on rock, light on sand, light filtered through shallow water, light dimming into blue. Its skin is always in conversation with these things. And perhaps this is one reason the octopus feels so calming to think about at night. It reminds us that survival in nature is not always loud or forceful. Sometimes it is subtle. Sometimes the deepest skill is not domination, but attunement. Not standing apart from the world, but learning to disappear gently into it. The octopus survives by noticing, by adapting, by becoming almost inseparable from the textures around it. A body that can soften into shadow, a skin that can answer stone, a surface alive with pigments, reflections, and tiny rising textures. The more we look, the less the octopus seems like a fixed creature and the more it seems like an event. Something always in the process of becoming what the moment requires. And in the quiet sea, where so much depends on timing, stillness, and the art of not being seen, that living, shifting skin becomes one of the most extraordinary things evolution has ever made. To disappear is not always to leave. Sometimes it is to remain exactly where you are and become so perfectly attuned to the world around you that the eye moves past without ever fully settling. This is one of the quiet arts of the octopus. By now, we have already drifted through some of the machinery behind its changing skin. The pigment cells, the reflective layers, the rising textures that can make smooth flesh resemble rough stone or coral. But camouflage in the octopus is more than a set of biological tools. It is also a behavior, a way of using the body in time and space. The octopus does not merely possess camouflage. It performs it gently and precisely, as part of a whole style of life. An octopus hiding well is not just changing color. It is making choices. It is choosing where to settle, how still to become, how to fold the arms, whether to darken or pale, whether to resemble a patch of rock, a mound of algae, a shell bed, or a broken and uneven piece of reef. The disguise works because the body and the behavior cooperate. A color pattern without the right posture might fail. A perfect texture with the wrong movement might give the animal away. Camouflage, then, is not simply a costume. It is timing, restraint, and deep attention to background. In that sense, the octopus is not hiding from the world so much as entering into it more completely. On the seafloor, everything matters. The angle of light, the grain of sand, the shadows between stones, the roughness of coral, the scattered debris of shells. Many animals rely on camouflage in one form or another, but the octopus carries it to an unusual extreme because its body is so flexible and responsive. A fish may be born with a pattern that generally suits its habitat. A flounder may blend with sandy bottoms in a more fixed way, but an octopus can alter itself from moment to moment, can match one place, move a short distance, and then match another. Its camouflage is dynamic, local, alive to the present, and stillness is often part of the illusion. The sea is full of motion. Water moves, plants sway, light trembles, sand shifts. Yet within that endless motion, the wrong movement can reveal everything. An octopus often knows this. When it settles into camouflage, it may become extraordinarily still, as if understanding that the final step in vanishing is to give the eye nothing new to notice. Its body becomes pattern, texture, and patience. There is something almost meditative about that. Not because the octopus is meditating, of course, but because it shows how much can be accomplished through stillness properly placed. We often associate action with speed and visibility. The octopus reminds us that action can also be quiet, that one of the most effective responses to danger may be to slow down so completely that the world ceases to separate you from itself. Some octopuses go even further than camouflage into mimicry. This is a slightly different art. Camouflage means blending into the environment. Mimicry means resembling something else within the environment, often something dangerous, uninteresting, or best left alone. The most famous example is the mimic octopus, a species known for imitating the appearance and movements of other marine animals. It can arrange its arms and body in ways that resemble lionfish, sea snakes, or flatfish, depending on the situation. This does not mean mimicry is perfect theater in the human sense. The octopus is not staging a performance for appreciation. It is creating a useful impression, enough to influence the perception of predators or other animals nearby. And what makes this so remarkable is that the impression involves posture as much as appearance. Arms are extended differently. The body narrows or flattens. Movement changes. The disguise becomes behavioral, not merely visual. Even in species that are not famous mimics, there is often an element of suggestion in the way they hide. A raised patch of skin may suggest algae. A certain pale, roughened look may suggest coral rubble. A curl of arms around the body may help break up the outline into something less recognizable. In many habitats, survival depends not on creating a perfect copy, but on creating enough uncertainty, enough ambiguity. If a predator cannot quickly identify what it is seeing, that hesitation may be all the octopus needs. And uncertainty is one of the octopus's greatest allies, because its body is so changeable, and because the sea floor is such a textured and irregular place. The octopus thrives in the borderland between visibility and invisibility. It becomes a creature of maybe a stone, maybe a patch of weed, maybe nothing at all. This is especially powerful in the underwater world, where light is already filtered, softened, and fragmented by water. Outlines are less certain there. Distances are stranger. Surfaces shimmer. In that setting, the octopus does not need perfection. It only needs to lean into the uncertainty already present. This helps explain why camouflage in octopuses feels so complete. It is not just biology acting on a blank stage. It is biology working with the natural ambiguity of the sea. And yet, for all this subtlety, the octopus is not a passive creature. Camouflage is active, strategic. It hides not only to avoid being eaten, but also to hunt. A concealed octopus can approach prey more closely, can wait unnoticed near a crevice where a crab might pass. It can become part of the background until the moment action is needed. The same gift that protects it from danger also helps it become a patient predator. Again, the octopus survives not through one single strength, but through layered intelligence. Softness, flexibility, sensing, camouflage, patience. Each trait supports the others. Its ability to disappear is connected to its body shape, its skin, its nervous system, its behavior, and the structure of the environment. Nothing stands alone. The octopus is not simply painted by nature. It is coordinated by nature into a whole way of being. Perhaps that is why so many people describe octopuses as uncanny. They seem to understand the background. They seem to know how to become silence. A human observer looking at reef or stone may suddenly realize that what appeared to be part of the scenery has been watching all along. An eye opens in the pattern. An arm loosens from the rock. A shape that seemed fixed becomes fluid. And for a moment, the world feels slightly rearranged, as though hidden within it are minds that prefer not to announce themselves. There is a special kind of wonder in that realization. Not loud wonder, not the bright astonishment of spectacle, but a quieter kind, suited to the octopus itself. The wonder of noticing something that was always there, concealed not by distance, but by skill. The wonder of discovering that a creature can survive by becoming intimate with shadow, texture, and pause. So when we think of the octopus as a master of camouflage, it helps to think beyond color alone. Think of posture. Think of stillness. Think of the body folding itself into the grammar of stone and sand. Think of mimicry not as performance, but as survival through suggestion. And think of the sea itself, dim and shifting, offering 1,000 surfaces on which a soft-bodied mind can vanish almost completely. To disappear, for the octopus, is not to go away. It is to belong so closely to a place that the place begins to speak in its shape. There are many ways to move through water. Some creatures cut through it with the steady logic of fins and tails. Some pulse and drift. Some glide on wide wings of flesh. The octopus moves differently. Its motion does not seem built around one single pattern, but around choice. It can crawl, reach, pull, hover, glide in brief soft bursts, or suddenly propel itself backward in a clouded rush. Watching it move can feel a little like watching thought change its mind in real time. This is one of the reasons the octopus seems so difficult to place in the imagination. It does not travel like a fish. It does not walk like a crab. It does not float like a jellyfish. Instead, it moves according to the opportunities of the moment, with a body that is fluid enough to turn many forms of motion into one continuous language. Most of the time, many octopuses prefer not to rush through open water at all. They stay close to the seafloor, where surfaces offer information and shelter. There, movement becomes quieter. An arm reaches ahead and tests the ground. Another follows. The body gathers itself and slips forward. The suckers take hold, release, take hold again. The mantle lifts and settles. In this kind of crawling, the octopus seems less like a swimmer than a careful traveler across a shifting landscape of stone, sand, shell, and coral. It is not awkward there. It is graceful in a low, understated way. Each arm can work with the others or slightly apart from them, helping the body navigate cracks, uneven ledges, and narrow passages. Because the arms are so flexible, the octopus does not need a simple flat path. It can move over and around obstacles with the same body, changing shape as needed. One arm may anchor, another may pull. A third may explore a side crevice before the rest of the animal commits to that direction. The movement is distributed, responsive, and remarkably precise. This kind of crawling suits the octopus well. It keeps the animal close to the textures it understands, close to prey hidden in holes, close to shelter if danger appears, close to the visual and tactile complexity that helps camouflage do its work. A crawling octopus can pause in an instant and become still, can flatten itself, tuck in, or stretch one arm forward while the rest of the body remains hidden. The seafloor is not just a route for travel. It is a place of constant decision, and crawling allows those decisions to remain fine-grained and reversible. Sometimes, though, the movement becomes lighter. Instead of hugging every contour of the bottom, the octopus may lift and drift just above it, arms trailing or spreading in controlled balance. In these moments, the animal can appear to glide, neither fully walking nor fully jetting, but passing through the water with a kind of suspended softness. This motion is often brief, subtle, and difficult to separate from the surrounding water itself. It is one more example of how the octopus prefers control and adaptability over simple speed. And then there is jet propulsion. This is perhaps the octopus's most dramatic form of movement, though it is not the one it uses most economically. Water is drawn into the mantle cavity and then forcefully expelled through a muscular funnel called the siphon. By directing this stream of water, the octopus can shoot itself backward with surprising speed. It is a sudden and effective way to escape a predator, leave an exposed space, or move quickly when caution gives way to urgency. The movement can seem almost startling after so much softness. One moment, the octopus is settled among rock and shadow. The next, it is a pale blur moving through water, arms streaming behind like loose ribbons in a fast current. Often this burst is accompanied by ink, which we will come to more deeply later. But even without ink, the motion itself creates confusion. The animal is no longer blending into place. It is breaking away from place in a single decisive push. Yet this form of travel comes at a cost. As we have already begun to notice in the design of the octopus body, dramatic movement is not always the most sustainable movement. Jet propulsion is useful but physiologically expensive. It asks a great deal of a body that is otherwise optimized for flexibility, precision, and close contact with the environment. Many octopuses therefore use it sparingly, as a response to immediate need rather than a preferred everyday style. This is part of what makes their movement feel so expressive. They do not merely move because movement is constant. They move in modes: quiet mode, exploring mode, hunting mode, escaping mode, resting mode. Their bodies shift between these styles with very little separation, as though motion itself is another kind of camouflage. Sometimes visible, sometimes almost absent, always adapted to the moment. There is also a strange beauty in the directionality of jetting. Because the siphon expels water and the octopus moves in the opposite direction, it often shoots backward relative to where its eyes are facing. To us, backward flight can seem disorienting, but for the octopus it works perfectly well. The body is not committed to a front-facing, forward-only design in the way many vertebrates are. Its orientation is more flexible. Arms, mantle, siphon, and gaze can be coordinated in ways that make sudden reversal not a flaw, but an advantage. This flexibility extends even into the smallest motions. An octopus can alter the shape of its arms to reduce drag, to anchor, to spread itself against the ground, or to make itself seem larger or stranger to an observer. It can rise and settle with almost no visible transition. It can drift into a crevice that looked too narrow a moment before. It can emerge from hiding with a softness that makes the movement feel less like locomotion and more like appearance. Perhaps that is the most fitting way to think about octopus motion. Not as travel from one point to another, but as a series of appearances and disappearances. Here it is rock, then it is movement, then it is shadow again. The body is so responsive, and the environment so textured, that movement becomes part of the octopus's ongoing conversation with the world. It does not separate itself clearly from the reef and then pass across it like a machine crossing a floor. It stays embedded in the medium, adjusting continually, letting current, surface, risk, and opportunity shape how it proceeds. That is why even a simple crawl across the seabed can feel mesmerizing to watch. There is no wasted gesture, no rigid repetition, only a living intelligence distributing itself across 8 arms, letting each contact matter, letting each shift in posture contribute to the whole. The octopus does not march, composes itself forward. And as the sea grows quieter around our thoughts tonight, there is something restful in that image. A creature moving not with haste, but with attention. A body that can rush when it must, but prefers the slower knowledge of surfaces. A soft animal close to stone, breathing water, choosing each next point of contact in silence. Crawling when calm, gliding when needed, jetting only when the dark asks for urgency, always returning, when it can, to the slower rhythm of the seafloor. Some forms of intelligence feel familiar to us almost immediately. A dog learning a routine, a crow solving a puzzle, a dolphin responding to patterns. These things fit, at least loosely, into the ways we already imagine a mind. The body plan is different, but the general picture still feels recognizably animal in a way our own minds can approach without too much strain. The octopus is more difficult. Its intelligence does not arrive through social expression, facial familiarity, or a body that behaves anything like ours. It arrives through other routes, through touch, through exploration, through flexible problem solving carried out by a creature with no bones, no voice, and no shared evolutionary path of cognition remotely close to our own. And that is what makes it so quietly astonishing. The octopus is intelligent, but not in a way that looks like a softened copy of vertebrate intelligence. It represents a different experiment, a different ancient branch of life arriving, through its own pressures and needs, at sophisticated behavior. The last common ancestor between octopuses and humans lived unimaginably far back in time, long before anything like modern minds existed in their present forms. And yet, here we are, two distant outcomes of evolution, each capable in very different ways of sensing, learning, and responding to the world. There is something humbling in that. When researchers study octopus behavior, one of the most striking things they find is flexibility. An octopus is not simply running through a narrow set of fixed instincts again and again, can investigate unfamiliar objects, can learn from experience. It can solve practical problems that require some persistence and variation in approach. In aquariums and research settings, octopuses have opened containers, navigated mazes, manipulated latches, and interacted with puzzles designed to test their ability to adapt. These tasks matter not because they turn the octopus into a little underwater human, but because they show that the animal can do more than respond mechanically. Can try, pause, adjust, try again. That pattern, simple as it sounds, is one of the clearest signs of flexible problem solving in nature. Imagine an octopus encountering a closed shell, a jar with prey inside, or an unfamiliar enclosure with some small opening or mechanism standing between it and what it wants. A purely rigid behavioral system might repeat the same action over and over regardless of outcome, but an octopus often explores with variation. Tests. It manipulates. It uses its arms and suckers to gather information while acting. It shifts strategy in a way that suggests not a pre-written sequence, but an ongoing process of interpretation. This is especially striking because the octopus is usually solitary. Many of the animals we think of as highly intelligent are social creatures. Primates, dolphins, some birds, social life itself may help drive the evolution of learning, memory, and behavioral complexity. The octopus offers another possibility. It seems to have arrived at considerable intelligence without building a world around long-term social groups, shared offspring care, or coordinated collective living. Much of its mental life appears to be shaped instead by interaction with environment. Hunting, hiding, navigating, escaping, and making sense of a complex seafloor full of opportunities and threats. This world is a puzzle, and it lives by solving it. That may be one reason the octopus often appears so curious. Its environment demands constant interpretation. A crack in stone may be shelter, prey, or danger. A shell may be empty or occupied. A moving shadow may be edible, ignorable, or deadly. A narrow passage may open into safety or trap. A creature living mostly alone in such a world benefits from being able to explore carefully, remember useful outcomes, and respond with more than reflex. Of course, it is important to stay gentle and precise here. Scientists are careful about how they describe animal minds. We do not need to exaggerate octopus intelligence to appreciate it. We do not need to imagine hidden languages or underwater philosophies. What matters is what the evidence already shows. Octopuses are capable of learning, memory, object exploration, and problem solving that are impressive by any reasonable standard. Their behavior can be flexible. Their responses can vary with experience. Individual octopuses can even differ from one another in boldness and approach, something we will drift into more fully later. But even without overstatement, the reality is extraordinary enough. Because the octopus reaches these abilities from such a different biological starting point. Its nervous system is distributed. Its body is soft. Its arms are part of perception itself. Its life is often brief. Its world is tactile, local, and full of hidden surfaces. And from within that very different arrangement, a capable mind emerges. Not a human-like one, not a vertebrate one, but a real one, adapted exquisitely to its own conditions. When an octopus opens a container, it is not just demonstrating cleverness in the abstract. It is revealing something about how intelligence can be embodied. For us, problem-solving often feels distant from the body. We think, and then our hands carry out the answer. In the octopus, the separation is softer. The arms gather information while also becoming the means of solution. The suckers test and taste. The body bends around the problem. Touch and action are woven together. To solve is to feel through the structure of the thing itself. That makes octopus intelligence seem less like detached reasoning and more like a flowing interaction. A mind extended into matter. A cognition spread across movement and contact. A problem met not just by the brain, but by the whole living animal. This is why even simple octopus experiments can linger in the imagination. A jar lid turned open. A latch investigated, a route remembered, a repeated situation handled more efficiently the next time. These are not grand acts, they are quiet ones. But quiet acts of problem-solving often reveal more than dramatic displays, because they show the texture of how an animal deals with the ordinary obstacles of its world. And perhaps that is what makes the octopus feel so deeply compelling at night, when the mind itself is softening. It offers a reminder that intelligence is not singular in shape. It need not speak. It need not build. It need not resemble ours closely to be worthy of wonder. Sometimes it lives in 8 arms, tasting the edges of a shell in dim water. Sometimes it presses gently against a barrier until the body understands what the eyes could not say alone. Sometimes it solves not through abstract distance, but through contact so intimate that knowledge and touch become nearly the same thing. The octopus does not prove that nature repeats itself. It proves that nature can arrive, more than once, at something mind-like through very different roads. And in that realization, there is a calm kind of awe. Somewhere on the seafloor, in a crack between stones, a creature descended from ancient mollusks explores the world with enough flexibility to learn from it, enough sensitivity to read it, and enough intelligence to alter its behavior when the first attempt is not enough. No bones, no social chorus, no familiar face, only a quiet, searching body and a mind that took shape in darkness, water, and time. Not every octopus behaves in exactly the same way. That may sound like a small observation, almost too simple to matter, but it carries a quiet weight. When we first think of animals, especially animals we know only from a distance, it is easy to imagine them as pure representatives of their species, each one moving through life with more or less the same tendencies, the same responses, the same small library of instincts. But the closer scientists look at animal behavior, the more often individuality begins to appear. And with octopuses, that individuality can be surprisingly noticeable. Some octopuses seem bolder. Some seem more cautious. Some explore quickly, reaching toward unfamiliar objects with immediate interest. Others withdraw first, watching, waiting, perhaps touching only after a longer pause. These differences are not always dramatic, and they should not be exaggerated into human-style personalities too easily. Still, the evidence suggests that octopuses, like many other intelligent animals, do not come in a single behavioral mood. They can differ in temperament, in willingness to take risks, in how readily they investigate their surroundings. This matters because curiosity is one of the gentlest windows into an animal mind. To be curious is not simply to move toward something. It is to hold the world as worth investigating, to approach not only out of hunger or fear, but because the unfamiliar itself has become meaningful. In octopuses, this often appears through object exploration. A shell, a new structure in the environment, a container, a tool-like object, even a stream of water or an unexpected shape in a tank. These may draw attention. The arms extend. The suckers begin their careful work. The body shifts closer or farther, depending on the animal's disposition. What happens next varies, but what is constant is the sense that the octopus is not merely reacting. It is examining, and because examination in an octopus is so tactile, it feels strangely intimate. A human might look from a distance first. An octopus often reaches. It learns through contact. The world is brought into knowledge by being touched, tasted, turned, and held. A curious octopus is not just looking at an object. It is surrounding it with the distributed intelligence of its arms. It is asking many small questions at once. What is this made of? Does it move? Does it open? Is it edible? Is it dangerous? Can it be pulled, peeled, entered, carried, ignored? These are not verbal questions, of course, but they are real in the sense that behavior reveals them. This kind of curiosity can sometimes look very much like play. Play is one of the most delicate concepts in animal behavior because scientists use it carefully. Not every repeated or unusual activity counts as play, and not every act of manipulation is done for enjoyment in the way humans might imagine. Still, some observations of octopuses have suggested play-like behavior. Individuals have been seen interacting repeatedly with objects in ways that do not seem immediately tied to feeding, mating, or straightforward defense. In some settings, octopuses have been observed pushing objects into currents and then retrieving them again, or repeatedly manipulating items without any obvious practical goal. These moments are difficult to interpret with certainty, and yet they are deeply intriguing, because play, in many animals, is often associated with flexibility, exploration, and a nervous system capable of engaging the world beyond rigid necessity. Even if we remain careful and restrained in our language, there is something striking about a solitary marine invertebrate showing behaviors that seem open-ended, exploratory, and perhaps even lightly playful. The octopus, once again, invites us to widen our assumptions about where behavioral richness can appear. There is also a tenderness in the fact that not all octopuses appear equally eager in these situations. Just as some seem more willing to explore, others seem more reserved. Researchers have described differences in how individuals respond to novelty, how quickly they habituate to repeated experiences, and how they interact with objects or caretakers in aquarium environments. One octopus may come forward readily, another may hang back in its den. One may manipulate and investigate. Another may remain hidden, only partially extending an arm as if uncertainty still outweighs interest. This variation is important. It means that when we think about octopus intelligence, we should not imagine a single uniform creature repeated thousands of times in different seas. We should imagine many individuals, each shaped by species, environment, experience, and temperament. Intelligence is not a smooth blanket spread evenly across a species. It lives inside particular animals under particular conditions with slightly different expressions. And those expressions can feel unexpectedly recognizable. Not because an octopus is like a human in any deep or simple sense, but because curiosity itself is one of the broadest languages in life. To pause before the unknown, to reach gently toward it, to withdraw and return, to approach with caution or confidence. These rhythms are not ours alone. They appear across the living world in many forms, and in the octopus they take on a very special texture, soft, tactile, quiet, and oddly deliberate. Even the apparent mood of an octopus can seem to shift with circumstance. An individual at rest may appear calm and folded into itself, each arm tucked softly, the skin quiet in color and texture. The same animal, faced with novelty, may brighten or darken slightly, extend upward, orient its eyes more directly, and begin testing the scene. Another moment may bring defensiveness, or withdrawal, or sudden escape. This does not mean the octopus experiences moods exactly as we do, but it does mean its behavior is dynamic, context-sensitive, and rich enough that observers often feel they are meeting a presence rather than just a mechanism. That feeling is worth noting, even if we hold it gently. Humans are prone to seeing minds where there are patterns and responsiveness, so we must remain careful. But care does not require coldness. We can acknowledge both the scientific caution and the genuine depth of octopus behavior. The animal is not a mythic sage under the sea, and it is not a simple automaton either. It is something more interesting than both. A solitary creature with a distributed nervous system, a highly sensitive body, and a repertoire of behavior wide enough to include caution, boldness, exploration, and perhaps in some contexts, forms of play-like engagement. This is one more reason the octopus has become such a powerful symbol in the human imagination. It feels alive in a textured way. Alive not just in metabolism and motion, but in attitude, in style, in variation. One octopus may seem secretive. Another may seem inquisitive. One may vanish at once into the back of a den. Another may lean outward into the water as if the world itself has become a puzzle worth touching. And that quiet range of possibilities gives the octopus a special kind of presence. It is not merely an example of its anatomy. It is an individual inhabiting that anatomy, moving through its brief life with its own pattern of response. As night deepens and our thoughts begin to loosen, there is something soothing in that image. A creature alone among rocks and dim currents, not empty of character but full of it in small, subtle ways. Curious or cautious, hidden or reaching, soft-bodied, blue-blooded, and attentive. A mind that does not announce itself loudly, yet leaves traces of temperament in how it meets the unknown. And perhaps that is enough. Not to turn the octopus into something human, but to recognize that in the long, quiet story of life, individuality has appeared in many forms, and one of the most beautiful of them lives underwater, tasting the world with 8 patient arms. When an octopus hunts, it does not usually do so with the noise or force we often associate with predators. It is not built for the chase in the open water, and it rarely needs to be. Its way of hunting belongs to the seafloor, to crevices and shells and dim pockets beneath stone, where patience can be more useful than speed and touch can reveal what sight alone cannot. The octopus is a hunter of close distances, a hunter of surfaces, a hunter that reads the world not only with its eyes, but with the listening intelligence of its arms. Most octopuses eat other animals. Their diet often includes crabs, shrimp, small fish, clams, mussels, and other shellfish. What exactly they eat depends on species, habitat, size, and opportunity. A reef-dwelling octopus may spend much of its life investigating cracks and coral spaces where crustaceans hide. A species living over sandy bottoms may search differently, probing beneath the surface or exploring scattered shells. In each case, the pattern is similar. The octopus moves through a landscape full of concealment, and survival depends on finding what is hidden. This makes hunting an act of interpretation. A rock is not just a rock. A shell is not just a shell. A dark opening in the reef might contain nothing, or it might contain the next meal. The octopus approaches such uncertainty with a body designed for inquiry. One arm reaches into a crevice while the rest of the body remains outside. Suckers make contact with the inner surfaces. They test texture. They detect chemical traces. They feel for movement. A hidden crab that would be invisible to the eye may become suddenly obvious to touch. And because the arms are both sensitive and strong, the octopus can shift from investigation to capture in a single flowing motion. This is one reason octopus hunting can feel so unusual to imagine. It is not simply visual pursuit. It is tactile discovery. The prey is often found by being contacted, not just seen. The hunter extends itself into the environment and gathers information from within it. To us, this seems intimate, almost impossibly close. But for the octopus, it is natural. Its body is built to reach where the rest of it does not yet go. Its intelligence moves ahead through the arms, entering holes, turning shells, lifting stones, feeling along the seafloor with a delicacy that can become decisive in an instant. Crabs are among the prey most often associated with octopuses, and for good reason. A crab is armored, alert, and often well hidden, but the octopus has several advantages. Can approach quietly, can envelop, can manipulate. A crab tucked into a crack may be pulled free or pinned from multiple directions at once. Once caught, the prey is brought toward the beak at the center of the arms. There, the octopus can bite through softer parts or use other strategies depending on the prey and the species involved. Shellfish present a different challenge. A clam or mussel is protected not by movement but by enclosure. Some octopuses deal with this by prying shells open with force and persistence. Others may drill a small hole into the shell using the radula and then introduce saliva that helps subdue the animal inside. This sounds very specialized, and it is, but the pace of it is often slow rather than dramatic. The octopus does not need to overpower the shell all at once. It works with precision. It applies effort patiently. It uses the tools evolution gave it: suckers, arms, beak, and chemically active saliva. Over time, these habits can leave traces in the landscape. Around an octopus den, researchers sometimes find middens, little accumulations of discarded shells, crab remains, and other leftovers. These quiet piles tell a story. They mark a place where the animal has returned repeatedly, carrying prey back to a shelter to eat in relative safety. In a way, they are small archaeological signs of octopus life, evidence of preference, routine, and repeated success. A den with a midden is not simply a hole in the reef. It is a lived-in place shaped by habit and feeding. Fish, too, can become prey. Some octopuses stalk small fish by creeping slowly across the bottom, blending in until the distance is small enough to close suddenly. Others may spread their arms in a loose web-like shape to trap a fish against the substrate. The exact tactics vary, but the core style remains familiar by now. Patience, concealment, and close-range action. The octopus is rarely a wasteful hunter. It does not chase endlessly. It waits for moments in which its unusual body offers an advantage. This is why camouflage and hunting are so deeply linked. To remain unseen is not only a form of defense. It is also a form of approach. An octopus that becomes rock-like, still, and unreadable can move nearer to prey without announcing itself. Or it can wait beside the likely path of a crustacean and let the opportunity come to it. The same skin that keeps the octopus safe from larger predators also helps it become a successful predator in its own right. Nothing in the octopus exists only once. Traits overlap, support one another, and gain meaning through combination. Even the way the octopus eats reflects its particular kind of life. It does not tear flesh with jaws like a mammal, and it does not swallow prey whole like some fish. It brings the prey inward, toward the hidden center of its body plan. The arms do not merely capture, they cradle and position. The beak does its work quietly. The radula assists. Saliva may help begin the process. Feeding becomes one more example of how the octopus brings the world inward through a central point surrounded by softness. And yet, for all its effectiveness, the octopus is not a creature of endless aggression. This hunting is measured by need, opportunity, and risk. Searching for prey means exposing oneself. Reaching into dark places can reveal danger as well as food. Leaving the den requires judgment. A good hunter in the sea is not merely capable of capture. It is capable of choosing when the search is worth the cost. The octopus survives because it balances hunger against vulnerability, action against concealment. In that sense, its hunting is part of the same wider intelligence we have been circling all along. A quiet intelligence, an intelligence of touch, an intelligence close to stone and shell. As night settles more deeply around these thoughts, it becomes easy to picture the scene. A reef in low blue light, sand gathered in gentle hollows, a crab tucked beneath a ledge. An octopus approaching with the patience of something that does not need to hurry. One arm extending, then another. The suckers finding edges, surfaces, the faint signatures of life hidden inside the dark. A pause, a decision, a soft sudden bloom of movement, then stillness again. The hunt begins in silence and ends there too. No roar. No spectacle, just a creature of 8 arms and blue blood reading the seafloor one touch at a time, finding nourishment where others might see only rock, and turning the hidden world beneath the waves into a place it can understand, enter, and survive. Hidden inside the soft and fluid life of the octopus is another, quieter tool of survival. Not color, not camouflage, not the precision of its arms, but chemistry. Many octopuses are venomous. That sentence can sound sharper than it needs to, especially at night, so it helps to soften it with context. In nature, venom is not unusual. It appears in many different animals and serves many different purposes. For the octopus, venom is typically part of feeding and defense. It is a practical adaptation, not a horror story. Most octopuses use it in small and efficient ways, helping them subdue prey such as crabs, shellfish, and small fish. In most species, it is not something humans ever need to fear in ordinary imagination. It belongs naturally to the life of a hunter that must work closely and precisely. The octopus does not rely on venom alone, of course. Its body is a system of layered abilities. The arms catch and hold, the suckers grip and sense, the beak bites, and the saliva in many species contains compounds that can help immobilize prey or begin breaking tissues down. Some octopuses may use these secretions to quiet a struggling animal, making it easier to feed without damage or escape. In this sense, venom is not a dramatic final weapon. It is part of a coordinated feeding strategy, one more quiet refinement in a body already full of them. This becomes especially useful when prey is armored. A crab can pinch, a clam can close, a fish can thrash and slip. The octopus, hunting at close range, benefits from a way to reduce struggle once contact is made. Bringing prey inward toward the beak is safer and more manageable when the prey is subdued. So venom becomes less a symbol of danger and more a symbol of efficiency. It lets a soft-bodied hunter handle difficult meals without relying only on brute force. And at the center of this moment of capture is the beak. We have touched on it before, but it deserves its own slower attention. Hidden where the 8 arms meet, the beak is small, dark, and strong. It is the octopus's hardest body part, made from tough biological material, and it acts with remarkable precision. Seen alone, it can look almost bird-like, curved and pointed, though it belongs to an entirely different lineage. It does not dominate the face the way a bird's beak does. In fact, most of the time it is almost invisible, concealed by the soft architecture of the arms. But it is central to the octopus's way of life. With that beak, an octopus can pierce, bite, and begin opening prey that would otherwise be difficult to consume. Shellfish, crustaceans, and other hard-bodied animals can be managed because the beak concentrates force into a small cutting edge. It is the one hard answer hidden inside a body otherwise devoted to softness. A hard point at the center of a fluid design. That contrast feels almost symbolic. A creature made mostly of muscle, skin, and nervous sensitivity carries its sharpest tool deep within, not displayed outwardly, but kept in reserve. The octopus does not advertise its strength. It folds strength inward. It lets the outer body remain flexible, exploratory, and adaptable, while the beak waits like a small dark key in the middle. For most octopuses, this is enough. Venom modestly applied, beak carefully used, prey subdued and eaten. Humans, in nearly all cases, are not part of this story. And yet, there is one group of octopuses that has become famous for a more serious reason: the blue-ringed octopuses. These are small octopuses found in parts of the Indo-Pacific region, including waters around Australia and Southeast Asia. At rest, they can appear fairly unremarkable, mottled and subdued like many other small octopuses. But when alarmed or disturbed, bright blue rings can flash across the skin, vivid and unmistakable. The display is beautiful in a cold, precise way, a warning made visible. And in this case, the warning is real. Blue-ringed octopuses carry a powerful neurotoxin called tetrodotoxin, the same toxin known from some pufferfish and certain other marine animals. It can interfere with nerve signaling and muscle function, including the muscles involved in breathing. A bite from a blue-ringed octopus can be medically serious and requires urgent attention. This is one of the rare cases in octopus biology where calm respect needs to include clear caution. But even here, the tone need not become alarmed. Blue-ringed octopuses are not aggressive hunters of humans. They are small animals using a potent defense and feeding tool in their own ecological lives. Problems arise when they are handled, stepped on, or otherwise provoked. The right response is not fear of octopuses in general, but respect for the particular species and for the simple principle that small marine animals are best left undisturbed. In the ocean, beauty and danger often coexist quietly, and knowledge is one of the gentlest forms of safety. What makes the blue-ringed octopus especially fascinating is how it fits the larger octopus pattern while still standing apart. It is still soft-bodied, still clever, still camouflaged much of the time, still built around arms, suckers, beak, and shifting skin. But in moments of alarm, it becomes more visibly declarative than many other octopuses. The rings flare like signals in dark water, saying what many animals can only imply: do not continue, do not touch, let this boundary remain. In that sense, even the blue rings are part of the octopus theme of subtlety joined to precision. The warning is not constant. It appears when needed, and that is often how octopus biology works. So much of the animal remains hidden until the exact moment its usefulness emerges. The beak stays concealed until prey is brought inward. The venom stays unseen until feeding or defense requires it. The rings stay dim until threat makes clarity necessary. The octopus is a creature of reserves, revealing one adaptation after another only when the moment calls for it. There is something very elegant in that. A life not built around constant display, but around selective expression. A quiet hunter carrying chemistry in its saliva. A soft animal with one sharp tool at the center. A rare small relative whose blue warning rings flash like cold lanterns when danger comes too near. And through it all, the same biological lesson returns. The octopus survives not through one dramatic power, but through many refined ones working together. Flexibility, camouflage, intelligence, sensory richness, hidden force, chemical precision. The body is a layered answer to the world. As the water of thought grows darker and slower tonight, the details begin to soften into a single image. An octopus beneath a ledge, arms folded inward, skin calm, the beak hidden, its chemistry tucked away inside the ordinary silence of a marine life. Most of the time, nothing is visible but patience. And then, only if needed, the deeper tools appear. If the open sea can feel vast and exposed, the world of the octopus is often much smaller, more folded, and more intimate. It is a world of cracks in stone, hollows beneath coral, shell-strewn pockets in sand, abandoned spaces, hidden ledges, and little chambers where the body can be gathered inward and the outside world can be watched through a narrow opening. For many octopuses, home is not a grand territory in the way we sometimes imagine animal space. It is a den, a shelter, a chosen corner of the seafloor where danger is slightly farther away, and where the body can rest in partial concealment while the sea moves overhead. This fits the octopus perfectly, a creature so soft, so flexible, and so alert to texture does not need a large permanent structure. It needs a place that works with its body, a place that can be entered quickly, adjusted slightly, and defended when necessary. A narrow crevice between rocks may do, a cavity in coral may do, a depression in sand bordered by shell and rubble may do. What matters is not size alone, but shape, access, protection, and the possibility of retreat. When an octopus chooses a den, it is choosing more than a hiding place. It is choosing a center of life. From there it may hunt, rest, eat, watch, groom its body, and in some cases brood eggs. The den becomes an anchor point in an otherwise shifting underwater landscape. Water moves, light changes, predators pass, prey comes and goes, but the den remains, at least for a time, as a stable reference in a life that must always stay responsive. Because octopuses are so flexible, these homes can be surprisingly small. A gap that seems impossibly narrow to us may be enough. If the beak can pass through, much of the rest of the body can follow. The arms flow in first or last depending on need. The mantle compresses. The whole animal becomes less a solid occupant and more a fitted presence, matching the space from within. This ability gives the octopus access to a world of shelter closed to many other predators and prey alike. Tiny caves, broken shell pockets, drain-like openings in rock. These can become homes because the octopus body is itself almost den-like in its adaptability. Sometimes the octopus does more than simply occupy a shelter. It modifies it. Researchers and divers have observed octopuses arranging stones, shells, and debris near the entrances of dens, creating little barriers or adjusted openings. Not walls in the human sense, and not architecture in a grand dramatic way, but meaningful alterations nonetheless. A shell may be pulled into place. A stone may be shifted. Loose material may be gathered around the entrance. The result is a den that becomes slightly more defensible, slightly more hidden, slightly more fitted to the animal that lives there. This is one of those gentle facts that lingers in the imagination. A solitary marine invertebrate making small changes to its home. Not because it dreams of beauty or comfort as we do, but because survival favors fit, concealment, and control of the threshold between inside and outside. The den entrance matters. It is the point where the world enters vision, touch, and risk. To shape that point, even slightly, is to shape the terms on which the octopus meets the sea. Around some dens, there are signs of repeated life. We touched earlier on shell middens. Little accumulations of prey remains outside a home. Here, in the context of shelter, they feel even more evocative. A midden tells us that the den is not just a passing stop. It is a place to which the octopus has returned with food, again and again. Cracked shells, emptied crab parts, broken remains scattered nearby. These are the quiet evidence of habit, of a life lived from one protected place outward into hunting excursions and back again. There is a stillness in that image that suits bedtime thought very well. A ledge of reef, a dark opening beneath it, a few pale shells outside in the sand. And just inside, perhaps barely visible, the eye of an octopus reflecting a little of the filtered light. Some octopuses live in habitats where the shelter is less obviously rocky. On sandy or muddy bottoms, dens may be burrow-like, tucked beneath objects or formed through use of the substrate itself. In such places, shells become especially important. Empty shells can offer hard edges in a soft environment. Debris scattered across the seabed can create cover where none seems to exist at first glance. The octopus is often a master of making do with what is present, choosing and arranging rather than building from scratch. Its homes arise out of the materials already there. That, too, feels very octopus-like. Not imposing structure from above, but entering into the possibilities of the landscape. Reef, shell bed, sand hollow, crevice, rubble field, each offers different shelter options, and the octopus reads them in the way it reads everything else. Through the body, through contact, through sensitivity to shape and access. A den is not just seen, it is tested, entered, turned into lived space by repeated use. Dens also help explain something about octopus behavior more broadly. Although these animals can range outward to feed, they are often not restless wanderers without anchor. Many species seem to balance exploration with return. The den gives them a base from which risk can be managed. To leave it is to expose oneself. To return is to re-enter a zone of relative safety. In that rhythm, outward into uncertainty, inward into shelter, we can feel the basic pulse of octopus life. And perhaps this is one reason they seem so quietly relatable, even through all their strangeness. Because the idea of refuge is universal. A hidden place, a narrowed entrance, a space just large enough for the body to soften and wait. A place from which the world can be sensed without being fully entered. The octopus, for all its alien grace, also knows the value of retreat. There are even cases, in some species and settings, where octopuses appear to make unusually sustained use of certain areas, especially where good shelter and food are both available. Most are still broadly solitary, and their lives remain shaped by caution and movement, but their chosen spaces matter. Habitat is not abstract. It is deeply practical. Good shelter can mean survival, and the animal's attention to that fact is visible in the care with which dens are chosen and used. So when we imagine the octopus at home, it is best not to imagine open water first. Imagine stone. Imagine a seam in the reef where shadow remains even at noon. Imagine broken shells resting outside like pale moons. Imagine 8 arms folded inward around a hidden center. Inside that little fort of rock, shell, and silence, a strange intelligence waits. Not sleeping in the way we do, not dreaming perhaps in any familiar human sense, but resting, pausing, holding itself within the smallest secure geometry it can find. The sea moves over and around it. Fine particles settle. Light wavers faintly at the entrance. And for a while, the den holds. A home made not of ownership, but of fit. A shelter made not of walls, but of found shape. A little fortress of stone and shell on the breathing floor of the ocean. For a creature that can seem so mysterious, so capable, and so unlike anything else in the sea, the life of an octopus is often astonishingly brief. This surprises many people. We meet the octopus first through its complexity. Its eyes, its camouflage, its dexterous arms, its problem-solving, its hidden den, and complexity can create the illusion of duration. We imagine that such a creature must live a long time, gathering experience slowly in the deep patience of the ocean. But for many species, the truth is much shorter. Some octopuses live only around a year. Others may live 2 or 3 years, and a few larger species somewhat longer. Even the giant Pacific octopus, one of the largest and most impressive of them all, usually lives only a handful of years. It is a strange and slightly tender fact. So much intricacy held for so little time, and yet the shortness of octopus life is not an accident or a flaw. It is part of the rhythm by which many cephalopods live. They grow quickly. They mature relatively fast. They reproduce once or nearly once, and then their lives draw toward an end. The whole arc is compressed, as if evolution poured a great deal of intensity into a narrow span. Rapid growth, early capability, solitary decision-making, then reproduction, decline, and silence. The octopus is not a slow, enduring giant of the sea. It is more like a brief brightness moving through dark water. This brevity changes the feel of everything we have already seen. Its intelligence exists under time pressure. This curiosity exists under time pressure. It's hunting, hiding, learning, choosing of dens, reading of textures, all take place in a life that does not stretch comfortably into long years. The octopus must become itself quickly, cannot spend a decade learning the reef. It has only a limited span in which to grow from a tiny beginning into a capable, fully formed animal of astonishing complexity. And grow it does. Octopuses are known for rapid growth, especially in the earlier phases of life. A small hatchling or juvenile, fragile and nearly transparent in some species, may transform over months into a strong and adept predator. That growth depends on successful feeding, suitable habitat, avoidance of predators, and the constant negotiation of risk. To survive in the sea at all is already difficult. To grow fast while remaining soft-bodied and exposed is more difficult still. But the octopus has been shaped precisely for that challenge. Its short life may also help explain why its intelligence feels so focused and immediate. There is not much room for wasted time. A young octopus must learn the practical logic of its world quickly. What to eat, where to hide, how to move, what shadows to trust, what openings to enter, what textures mean safety. There is no long childhood protected by parents and social groups in the way we see in many mammals or birds. Most octopus mothers will never meet their young as active teachers. The hatchlings enter the world carrying inherited instincts and capacities, but then must survive largely on their own. This gives octopus life a solitary quality from very early on. Most species are not social in the enduring sense we often associate with intelligence. They do not typically live in family groups, share long-term tasks, or maintain extended relationships the way some vertebrates do. Their lives are more private, more dispersed. Each individual moves through the world with its own body, its own den, its own risks, its own brief span of learning and decision. There may be encounters, mating, moments of conflict or avoidance, but the general atmosphere is one of aloneness. Not loneliness, perhaps. That is too human a word, but solitude certainly, and there is something deeply fitting about that solitude in the case of the octopus. It is a creature of touch, shadow, and highly local attention. Its world is one of near surfaces and hidden interiors. A solitary life suits a hunter that depends on stealth, concealment, and quick independent judgment. It need not negotiate constantly with companions. Its intelligence does not bloom in social chatter. It blooms in close contact with the material world. Still, the shortness of its life casts a soft shadow over all of this. The octopus becomes, in our minds, not only impressive but fleeting. A being of elaborate sensation and control that rises into form, lives intensely, and vanishes again. There is a kind of underwater autumn to that idea, not tragic in a sharp way, but gently wistful. A reminder that nature often does not measure value by duration. Some lives are long and slow, others are short and dazzling. The octopus belongs to the latter pattern. Scientists sometimes describe many octopuses as semelparous, meaning they reproduce once before death. That biological pattern shapes their entire life history. Energy is gathered not for repeated cycles over many years, but for a concentrated arc. Growth leads toward reproduction. Reproduction leads toward decline. The life is coherent in its own way, but compressed. And because it is compressed, everything seems to glow a little more brightly. The den matters. The hunt matters. The body's flexibility matters. Its camouflage matters. Its brief encounters with danger and opportunity matter. Nothing in octopus life feels padded by excess time. Even its solitude begins to feel less like emptiness and more like concentration. A life without much room for distraction. A life lived close to necessity and sensation. There is a certain calm honesty in that. The octopus does not promise permanence. It does not linger through decades. It appears, grows, learns, hunts, mates, and fades. Its intelligence is real, but not accompanied by a long future. Its body is miraculous, but temporary. Its dens fill and empty. Shell middens gather and are scattered. The reef remembers only in fragments. And yet this does not make the octopus story smaller. If anything, it makes it larger, because it reminds us that wonder is not reserved for what lasts longest. Complexity can exist in brief forms. Beauty can be concentrated. A mind can shine for a short season in the sea and still represent one of evolution's most extraordinary achievements. The octopus asks us to let go of the assumption that longevity is the only measure of significance. Perhaps that is one reason it feels so dreamlike. It is real, entirely real, but it moves through the imagination like something half borrowed from another possibility of life. A creature that becomes brilliant quickly, lives privately, and is gone sooner than we expect. Soft-bodied and alert, blue-blooded and solitary, here for such a little while. So as we drift further into the quieter stretch of this journey, it helps to hold that truth gently. Somewhere beneath the water, beneath the moving surface and the diluted light, an octopus is alive inside its brief and concentrated season. It has only so much time to be what it is. To crawl across stone, to test a shell, to disappear into sand-colored stillness, to learn the shape of one den and then another, to be, for a year or two or three, one of the strangest and most beautifully made minds in the ocean. Then the tide of its life recedes, not with drama, not with ceremony, just with the same quiet inevitability that carries everything else in the sea from appearance into disappearance, and from motion back into stillness. In the life of the octopus, there comes a time when the restless pattern of hunting, hiding, and solitary movement gives way to something quieter, A den becomes more than shelter. Time slows. The body that once moved outward into the world turns inward toward a single task. This is the season of eggs. For many octopus species, reproduction is not the beginning of family life in the way humans might imagine it. There is no long household beneath the sea, no pair raising young together through many changing seasons. The octopus follows a different rhythm, one shaped by brief adulthood, solitary existence, and a final, concentrated devotion to the next generation. And in that rhythm, the mother's care becomes one of the most tender and haunting chapters in the entire story. Before that stillness, there is courtship. Even among solitary animals, the meeting between male and female must happen somehow. And in octopuses, it unfolds through a mixture of caution, signaling, and physical adaptation. The sea is not a simple place for trust. Octopuses are predators, sensitive and alert, and a close encounter with another octopus is not automatically safe. So courtship often carries an element of careful distance. The animals may approach slowly, posture differently, or remain ready to withdraw if the interaction changes. In some species, males display patterns or body positions that help distinguish their intent. In others, the encounter may remain subdued and brief, shaped more by caution than spectacle. The male carries a specialized arm called the hectocotylus. This is one of the octopus's many quiet biological surprises. It is not an entirely separate limb, but a modified arm used to transfer packets of sperm to the female. Depending on the species, this may happen at close range, sometimes with the male reaching toward the female while keeping part of his body at a safer distance. That detail alone tells us something about octopus life. Even reproduction is shaped by the logic of vulnerability, by the need to balance contact with caution. The act itself is not dramatic in the way the human imagination sometimes expects from marine life. It can be slow, careful, and strangely restrained. Two soft-bodied animals, each highly alert, meeting briefly in a life otherwise marked by solitude. And then, after that meeting, the deeper stillness begins. The female carries fertilized eggs and eventually seeks a secure place to lay them. This is where the den becomes transformed. A shelter once used for resting and feeding now becomes a nursery, though that word may sound warmer and more domestic than the underwater reality. The eggs are often attached in strings or clusters to the ceiling or walls of a den, tucked safely in a crack, a cave, or some protected chamber where currents can pass gently enough to bring oxygen, but not so harshly that the eggs are damaged. In some species, there may be dozens or hundreds of eggs. In others, many thousands, depending on the size of the animal and the reproductive strategy of the species. Once the eggs are laid, the mother begins her vigil. It is one of the most extraordinary acts of care in the marine world. She does not simply leave the eggs hidden and hope for the best. She remains with them. She watches. She cleans them with the tips of her arms. She gently removes debris, algae, or microorganisms that might harm their development. She fans them with water, keeping oxygen flowing over them in steady currents. Again and again, hour after hour, day after day, she tends them with a patience so complete that it almost seems to suspend the rest of her life. This care matters because octopus eggs are living, developing bodies, and developing bodies are vulnerable. They need oxygen. They need protection from fouling. They need stability. The mother provides all of this with the simplest tools possible: her body, her movement, her presence. No nest woven from external materials, no shared labor from a mate, no migration to a communal breeding ground. Just one female octopus in a dim shelter, holding herself near the eggs and working ceaselessly to keep them alive. Perhaps the most moving part of this story is what she gives up. In many species, a brooding female stops feeding or feeds very little during this long watch. Her life narrows around the eggs completely. She may remain in the den for weeks or months, depending on species and water temperature, devoting her remaining energy to ventilation, cleaning, and protection. The body that once hunted across reef and sand now becomes almost entirely still except for the small, repeated motions of care. A sweep of the arms, a pulse of water, a quiet adjustment, then again and again. There is no need to romanticize this. It is not human motherhood translated neatly into the sea. It is something older, simpler, and in some ways even more absolute. A biological devotion shaped by evolution into a final concentrated act. The mother is not planning for years ahead. She is not raising hatchlings through a long future. She is carrying the eggs through the narrow passage between being laid and becoming alive enough to leave. Yet even without human framing, the tenderness is unmistakable. It lives in the repetition, in the refusal to abandon the clutch, in the long stillness of the den, in the physical closeness between mother and eggs, where protection is not symbolic but literal, continuous, and exhausting. The eggs themselves change slowly over time. Within their protective coverings, tiny octopuses develop in silence. Cells divide, tissues form, eyes darken, little arms emerge. All of this happens hidden from the outer sea, suspended in the soft interior world the mother has chosen and maintained. Outside, currents move across rock, predators pass, light rises and fades with the day. Inside, the eggs ripen gradually in their strings, touched by water and care. For the listener drifting through this tonight, this may be one of the calmest images in the whole octopus story. Cave in dim water, rows of pale eggs hanging like beads or small moons. A mother beneath them, motionless except for the slow fanning of her arms. Nothing loud, nothing hurried, only the patient movement of water and time. In some species, the brooding period can be astonishingly long, especially in colder waters where development slows. Life under the sea often follows temperature's quiet rule. Colder water can mean slower growth, longer waiting, deeper patience. And so the mother remains, sustaining the eggs through a season that may feel almost endless, even as her own strength begins to fade. She is not preparing to guide the young once they hatch. In most species, that part will not come. Her role is to bring them to the threshold, to keep them oxygenated, clean, and defended until the moment of emergence. And then, when the eggs finally hatch, the tiny young enter the sea alone. There is something profoundly octopus-like about that ending. The care is total but not extended. The protection is complete but temporary. The mother gives everything to the beginning and nothing to the long middle beyond it, because she will not be there for that. Her love, if we may use such a careful and limited word, is concentrated entirely in the watch. And so the den, once a place of refuge for one solitary creature, becomes for a time the still center of many future lives. The walls hold the eggs. The water passes. The mother keeps her vigil. And in the quiet dark, one generation waits while another gently gives itself away. After the eggs have been laid, and after the long watch has begun, something changes in the female octopus that is as natural as it is sorrowful. It does not happen all at once. There is no single visible border where one phase ends and another begins. Instead, the change gathers slowly, almost like the dimming of light underwater. The mother continues tending her eggs, continues cleaning them, aerating them, guarding them with her body. But while she protects the next generation, her own life begins to recede. Strength thins, appetite fades. The rhythms of hunting and outward movement do not return. Her world narrows more and more around the clutch, until the future exists almost entirely in the eggs and hardly at all in herself. This process is called senescence. In simple terms, it is the biological decline associated with aging, but in octopuses it is bound especially tightly to reproduction. Many species are semelparous, meaning they reproduce once and then die. The female's body, having turned toward the task of brooding, enters a final chapter from which it does not recover. The care she gives the eggs is not one phase among many in a long life. It is the culminating act of that life. There is something almost unbearably quiet about this. A creature so alert, so responsive, so beautifully equipped for problem solving and camouflage, gradually surrendering its own future while holding still for another's beginning. And yet, in the language of biology, this is not a mistake. It is part of the pattern evolution has shaped. The octopus life does not arc toward repeated parenthood over many seasons. It arcs toward one great transfer of energy into reproduction, followed by decline. Researchers have long been interested in how this decline is controlled, and one of the key structures involved is the optic gland. Despite the name, the optic gland is not simply about vision. It is an endocrine organ, meaning it releases chemical signals that affect the body. For many years, scientists have understood that it plays a major role in the post-reproductive changes of octopuses, especially females. Classic experiments showed that when the optic gland was removed in brooding females, some aspects of the usual decline could be delayed or altered. That finding suggested something profound. The end of the octopus life cycle is not just passive exhaustion. It is also actively regulated by the animal's own biology. The body, in a sense, begins instructing itself toward closure. That may sound cold when put too plainly, but in a deeper way, it is only another example of how tightly coordinated life can be. Reproduction is not a single event isolated from the rest of the organism. It changes metabolism, behavior, hormone signaling, feeding, and the use of remaining energy. In the octopus, these changes are especially concentrated. The optic gland becomes part of a cascade, a set of signals helping shift the animal from the wandering intelligence of adult life into the still, sacrificial concentration of brooding and decline. In the later stages, the female may stop eating almost entirely. She remains beside the eggs. She continues the movements of care for as long as she can. But the body that once hunted crabs and searched the reef begins to weaken. Skin may lose some of its earlier richness. Movement becomes more limited. The alert hunter and den builder becomes thinner, slower, more inward. This is not because she has forgotten how to live, but because her body has entered a program in which the remaining purpose is no longer self-maintenance. It is completion of the eggs, completion of the life cycle, completion of the ancient pattern that has shaped so many octopus generations before her. This can be difficult to think about without feeling sadness, and perhaps that is all right. Not the sharp sadness of catastrophe, but the softer sadness that belongs to many natural endings. The octopus does not usually die in battle, nor in some dramatic marine scene. Often she dies in stillness, after weeks or months of patient care, near the eggs that will hatch into a world she will not see. Her body gives everything to the threshold. That is the design and also the cost. There is a wider biological logic here. In creatures that produce many young and invest heavily in a single reproductive effort, semiparity can make evolutionary sense. Resources are gathered and then spent in one concentrated burst, rather than divided across many seasons of repeated breeding. The octopus grows quickly, matures quickly, reproduces once, and the cycle begins again through the hatchlings. This strategy is not gentle for the individual, but nature is not always organized around gentleness. It is organized around what persists, and what persists is the pattern. The mother fades, the eggs develop, the young emerge, the reef receives them, the lineage continues. There is a certain solemn beauty in how little noise accompanies this. No grand ritual, no chorus, no long farewell, just the dim interior of a den, the movement of water, and a body gradually nearing stillness. The mother remains close to the eggs for as long as she can, and then at some point she no longer can. By the time the hatchlings leave or shortly after, her part is over. Even male octopuses, though their path is different, often die not very long after mating. Their decline may not involve brooding, but the same general life strategy still shapes them. Reproduction marks the turn toward the end. The octopus life, for both sexes, is brief and concentrated, with maturity arriving quickly and old age coming soon after its central purpose has been fulfilled. This is one reason octopuses can feel so dreamlike to us. They are brilliant, capable, and intensely alive, yet they do not remain. Their lives move quickly through the sea, as if complexity itself had been given only a short candle to burn. We meet them in our imagination as masters of camouflage, curious problem solvers, soft-bodied engineers of stone and shell, and then we realize that all of it exists on borrowed time. The mother brooding her eggs makes that truth impossible to ignore. Every motion of care is also a motion toward the end, and still it does not feel empty, because the ending is full of meaning even in a purely biological sense. The mother's stillness is not absence. It is labor. Her fading is not useless. It is the final transfer by which new octopuses are brought into the world with the best chance possible. Evolution has written this exchange deeply into the body, and the body obeys. As we move into the gentler and dimmer stretch of this night's journey, perhaps it is enough simply to hold the image. A den in quiet water, eggs hanging in pale rows, a mother beside them, thinner now, slower now, but still lifting water across them in soft, repeated motions. Outside, the reef continues in its usual way. Inside, a life is closing while others prepare to open. This is not cruel in the theatrical sense. It is older than cruelty, older than intention. It is part of the sea's long arithmetic, where one generation gathers itself into the next and then recedes. And in the octopus, that arithmetic is written with unusual tenderness. A final season of care, a gradual dimming, and a silence that makes room for many small lives to begin. By now, after drifting through hearts and arms and skin and silence, it might be easy to imagine the octopus as one single kind of creature, one shape, one size, one style of life repeated wherever the sea allows it. But the ocean is rarely so simple. The word octopus names not just one animal, but a wide and varied group of animals spread across many habitats, depths, temperatures, and coastlines. Some are large enough to seem almost mythic when fully extended. Others are so small and delicate that they can disappear among shells, pebbles, and patches of sand. Some live on reefs washed in color and sunlight. Others belong to dim, cold waters, or to depths where daylight never reaches at all. The octopus, in other words, is not a single design. It is a family of designs all built around a common body plan, yet each one tuned to a different way of living. Perhaps the most famous of the larger species is the giant Pacific octopus. It lives in the cold waters of the North Pacific, along coasts that can feel, even in imagination, broad and quiet and slightly austere. This is a powerful animal, sometimes reaching impressive sizes, with a mantle as large as a melon or more and arms extending far beyond that. When people think of a truly enormous octopus, this is often the species they are picturing. And yet, for all its size, it still lives according to the same gentle logic we have seen elsewhere. Denning in rocky places, hunting patiently, using camouflage, touch, and intelligence rather than brute dominance. Cold water seems to suit a certain grandeur. There is something fitting about a large octopus moving through dim northern seas, over stone and kelp and shadowed reefs, its body changing color as it goes. It does not thunder through that environment. It remains an octopus, soft, responsive, close to surfaces. But scale changes the feeling. What is delicate in a small reef octopus becomes almost ancient in a giant one. An arm crossing stone can seem less like a limb and more like a current with intention. And then, elsewhere, there are the small octopuses, species that live among tropical reefs, seagrass beds, sandy flats, coral rubble, and shell fields. Some of these are compact and brilliantly adapted to the fine-scale complexity of coastal habitats. Their lives unfold close to the bottom, where every grain of sand and every crevice may matter. In smaller species, the octopus body sometimes feels even more improbable because all the same complexity has been compressed into a quieter scale. Eyes watch from a body that could fit into the palm of a hand. Arms curl around shells and bits of rock. Tiny suckers taste a world made of equally tiny decisions. Miniature does not mean simple. A small octopus is not a lesser version of a larger one. It is a complete design, fitted to its own landscape of risks and opportunities. In shallow, warm waters, life can be busy and bright, full of predators, prey, and visual complexity. Small octopuses thrive there by becoming masters of quick concealment and local knowledge. A shell, a bottle cap, a discarded coconut half, a burrow entrance under rubble. These can all become significant in a life lived near the threshold of being seen or swallowed. Some species are pelagic for parts of their lives, especially when young. Others settle firmly into benthic existence, meaning life on or near the bottom. The ocean offers many layers, and octopus species occupy different ones at different stages. Hatchlings in some species drift in the plankton, tiny and vulnerable, carried by currents before eventually settling into more adult habitats. This means the octopus story sometimes begins not in a den, but in open water, suspended among other drifting lives until growth and chance bring the young animal down to the seafloor. There are also deep-sea octopuses, and they carry an especially distant kind of beauty. The deep ocean is a place of pressure, cold, and near total darkness, where food can be scarce and movement often seems slower, more deliberate, more spaced by necessity. Octopuses that live there are shaped by those conditions. Some have softer, more gelatinous bodies. Some brooding females in deep cold environments may guard their eggs for astonishingly long periods, because low temperatures slow development so dramatically. In these animals, the octopus life cycle takes on an even more spacious and patient quality, as though time itself has thickened in the dark. Deep-sea octopuses remind us that the octopus form is not tied only to reefs and shallow coastlines. It can descend into realms where almost everything feels hushed beyond ordinary measure. There, under immense pressure and in water colder than many people have ever touched, the same basic themes remain. Arms, suckers, camouflage or concealment, eggs, solitude, and the quiet problem of survival. Evolution has not stopped at the shoreline or the reef edge. It has carried the octopus blueprint downward into some of the least familiar habitats on Earth. And then there are species so specialized that they seem to inhabit little private versions of the ocean. Octopuses that prefer sandy bottoms and burrows. Octopuses associated with coral heads. Octopuses that make use of shells, human debris, or other portable shelter. Octopuses with different markings, arm proportions, textures, or habits that suit the particular geography of their lives. To study octopus diversity is to realize that the common octopus image, the generic 8-armed thinker of the sea, is only a doorway. Beyond it lies a wide field of variations, each one a slightly different answer to the same ancient challenge. How can a soft-bodied mollusk survive in the ocean without a shell? The answers are many. Be large in cold water. Be small and nearly invisible in warm shallows. Grow fast. Hide well. Brood patiently. Taste the world through touch. Use the den. Use the skin. Use the mind. The giant Pacific octopus may inspire awe through scale, but the tiny octopus tucked into a shell bed inspires another kind of awe, the awe of compression, of intricacy folded into miniature life. The deep-sea species inspire still another kind, because they seem almost like thoughts dreamed by the abyss itself. Yet all of them belong to the same wider lineage, the same cephalopod experiment in softness and intelligence. This breadth of form is part of what makes octopuses feel so oceanic in the deepest sense. They are not one answer imposed everywhere. They are many answers, distributed across the sea's different temperatures, textures, depths, and histories. The ocean is not a single place, and the octopus has not met it in a single way. Instead, octopuses have diversified into many niches, becoming giants here, miniatures there, patient brooders in one region, agile reef hunters in another. And still, through all that diversity, something recognizable remains. The eye, the arms, the inward hidden beak, the quiet nearness to surfaces, the sense that intelligence is taking shape not behind the body, but through it. As we near the final edges of this long underwater drift, it is soothing to imagine these many octopuses scattered through the world's waters like separate notes in one low, continuous song, one beneath a cold Pacific ledge, one among warm corals in the Mediterranean, one resting in the dim blue of deeper water, one so small it can vanish into shell and sand, one broad and red in the north, one pale and delicate in the deep. Many forms, many habitats, one ancient softness, repeated and revised by the sea. And somewhere in each of those lives, a den waits, a hunt begins, a skin shifts, and a quiet mind reaches out through 8 arms into the patient textures of the world. And so, after all the arms and hearts, the skin and the dens, the hunting and the brief bright life, we arrive at something quieter than a fact. We arrive at a feeling. The feeling that the octopus is not merely an unusual animal, but a reminder that life on Earth is deeper, stranger, and more inventive than our everyday habits of thought usually allow. We spend much of our lives surrounded by familiar forms, faces, voices, hands, footsteps, creatures with backbones, creatures that look back at us in ways we can immediately understand. The octopus belongs to another grammar. It does not meet the world with a spine, or a shell, or a pack, or a call through the air. It meets the world through softness, distributed touch, color that can become stone, and a mind spread deeply into the body itself. That is why it can feel almost otherworldly. Not because it came from elsewhere, but because it shows us how much elsewhere already exists within this one planet. The octopus is entirely Earth-made, entirely the product of oceans, chemistry, time, pressure, hunger, danger, and adaptation. And yet, standing before it in thought, we feel the boundaries of our own assumptions loosen a little. We see that intelligence need not look like our intelligence, that problem-solving need not arrive in a creature with a face we instantly trust, that sensitivity can live in suckers tasting a rock, that a body can be soft almost everywhere and still become one of the most precise forms of life in the sea. In the octopus, mind and matter seem unusually close. Its body does not merely carry its intelligence. It expresses it at every level. The arms think through touch. The skin answers light. The whole animal changes shape according to context, as if thought itself had become muscular and fluid. There is no simple separation between brain, body, and world. Each flows into the others. The seafloor is read by the arms. The body reshapes in response. The den becomes part of behavior. Camouflage becomes part of perception. Hunting becomes part of inquiry. Even hiding becomes a form of understanding. That may be one of the deepest lessons the octopus offers us. That life is not always divided into neat categories. Seeing here, thinking there, acting somewhere else. The octopus blurs those lines in a calm and elegant way. It senses by touching, learns by manipulating, survives by becoming inseparable from the textures around it. It is not merely in its environment. It is in conversation with it continually. Rock, shell, current, prey, shadow, opening, color, risk. The octopus lives inside this web not as a fixed object, but as a responsive presence. And there is another lesson too, softer still. The octopus shows that vulnerability and brilliance can exist together. It is a soft-bodied animal in a sea full of teeth and jaws. It has no armor to retreat into, no bones to support it. Its life is brief. The solitude is real. And yet none of this prevents it from becoming extraordinary. In fact, Some of its most astonishing abilities arise precisely because it is vulnerable. It became flexible because it was exposed. It became camouflaged because it could not simply endure a direct blow. It became intelligent because survival demanded attentiveness, adaptability, and problem-solving in a world of constant uncertainty. That is a beautiful pattern in nature. Not invincibility, but refinement. Not domination, but sensitivity. Not hardness, but skill. The octopus survives not by overpowering the sea, but by listening to it in every possible way. It listens through skin, through suckers, through eyes, through timing, through stillness. It listens to the geometry of a crack in the reef, to the chemical trace inside a shell, to the visual rhythm of sand and shadow. And then it answers, sometimes by moving, sometimes by hiding, sometimes by changing color, sometimes by waiting. It is, in a way, a creature made of responses so well tuned that they begin to resemble wisdom. Not human wisdom, not thought wrapped in language, but the quiet wisdom of being exquisitely fitted to a place. And still, perhaps the most moving part of the octopus story is how brief that fitting is. All this sensitivity, all this complexity, all this strange elegance, held for a year or two or three and then gone. The octopus reminds us that nature does not always place its greatest intricacies inside its longest lives. Sometimes it concentrates wonder into short forms. A mind can arise, flourish, solve, hide, hunt, brood, and vanish again before many other creatures have fully reached adulthood. That brevity does not diminish the octopus. It lends it a kind of lunar tenderness, as though its whole existence were something that appears in the tide pools of time for one passing phase and then is drawn back into the deep. Perhaps this is why people so often speak of octopuses with a peculiar mixture of affection and awe. They feel at once intimate and remote, soft yet unreadable, calm yet impossible. They seem to belong to the old dream of what life might look like if it had taken another road. And of course, life did take another road. Many roads. The octopus is one of them. A branch of being so different from our own that to look at it honestly is to feel the tree of life widen in the mind. That widening can be restful. To remember, at the end of the day, that the world is not exhausted by what is familiar to us. That the sea still holds forms of life whose mere existence gently rearranges our sense of what is possible. 8 arms, 3 hearts, blue blood, a mind distributed into touch, a body that can become rock, coral, shadow, or motion, a mother who gives her remaining life to the watch over pale hanging eggs, a creature descended from ancient mollusks, yet somehow seeming to look back at us from a very different idea of reality. And all of it true, not legend, not metaphor, just life, patiently unfolding in salt water. So perhaps the octopus teaches us something about humility as well. That intelligence is not ours alone in spirit, even if ours is different in form. That solutions need not resemble one another to be real. That a creature may be silent, solitary, shell-less, and short-lived, and still count among the most astonishing beings on earth. And maybe, if we let the thought grow even gentler now, it teaches us one final thing. That there is no need to grasp the whole mystery at once. It is enough to lie quietly in the dark and know that somewhere, beneath the surface of the sea, among rocks and currents and sleeping reefs, an octopus rests inside its den, its arms folded, its skin softly answering the world, its hidden hearts doing their patient work, its strange and beautiful life going on without announcement. The planet is full of such lives, unseen, unhurried, perfectly real. And tonight, for a little while, one of them has kept us company in the dark. Now the water is very still. The reef grows dimmer in the mind, and the details begin to loosen softly at the edges. The arms, the stones, the blue blood, the hidden den, all of it drifting farther out now, as though the sea itself were gently carrying these thoughts away. And perhaps that is enough for tonight. You do not need to hold every fact. You do not need to remember every shape or every name. You can simply let the feeling remain. A feeling of quiet water, of ancient life moving slowly through shadow, of a creature so strange and yet so perfectly at home in its own world. Somewhere beneath dark waves, an octopus is resting now, folded into a crack in the rock, breathing water in slow, patient rhythms. The skin pale, then darker, then still again. The sea moving above it like a second night. And all around that hidden body, the ocean continues in silence. Sand settles, currents slide past. Far above, the surface carries moonlight or cloud or nothing at all. But below, near the seafloor, everything is calm, close, and unhurried. So you can rest there too in thought, near the stone, near the quiet, near the soft intelligence of a life that never needed noise to become extraordinary. Let the mind drift as the octopus drifts. Let it loosen its shape. Let it settle into darkness without fear. There is nothing more to solve now, nothing more to follow, only the slow, soothing sense that the world is wider and gentler than it seemed a little while ago, and that somewhere in that wide and gentle world, hidden in blue shadow, 8 patient arms are folded into sleep-like stillness. And now you may do the same. Sweet dreams,